Can you all hear me okay? I'm sure you can. Thank you all for coming here this evening. This is part of a nationwide roadshow that we are doing. Last night I was in Rotorua, and before that Tukuroa and in Taupo for this part of the roadshow. So tomorrow I'm making my way through Tauranga Thames, and then I start the far north up in Whangarei, Dargaville, Kaitaia, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to start by introducing myself. So ko waio, ko ngā mahon tōku ingoa, no ngā takahangune te iwi, no reira tēnā rā koutou katoa. Formerly an employee of Te Wānanga o Awanuiarangi a few years ago now. So just to shout out to the students who are going to be speaking very shortly. One of my good friends is a lecturer there, Te Kanikingi. I won't tell you any stories about him because it'll get him in a lot of trouble. So I'll leave it there. But he's a boy from Purupuru. So my journey as a health advocate, I like to describe myself as an accidental advocate. It started back in 2018, and in 2018, my wife Wiki was taken into a cubicle and told by a surgeon that she had advanced breast cancer at the age of 40. And so shortly thereafter, there was an appointment made with an oncologist in Palmerston North, that's where we live. And he told her there was this wonder drug that would greatly prolong her life. The only problem is it's not funded here in New Zealand. And so the name of that drug is Ibrance. We started off doing a campaign for that drug to be funded. We had a lot of struggles with the current government accepting that the Pharmac model was broken and not working for patients, and also being severely underfunded. Alongside that drug was another drug called Kadcyla. And so that drug treated another subgroup of women with advanced breast cancer. So the two drugs were campaigned for together, largely by a group of women called Metavivors, an amazing group of women. Sadly, many of them are no longer with us, but they all had metastatic breast cancer. So we went about, we campaigned, we petitioned, we marched down to Parliament, we spoke in front of the Health Select Committee, we spoke on breakfast and all the media, and eventually it was funded. So that's the good news. The sad news for us, though, was that it came too late in Wiki's cancer journey. So Wiki should have received it as a first-line treatment. She received it in her fifth line. So by that stage, her cancer had progressed somewhat, and it wouldn't receive the maximum benefit as it would in comparison with having it as a first line. So Wiki took the drug, and it gave her an extra 3 months' worth of life. The blessing in this story is that 3 months before Wiki died, our first moko, our first grandchild was born, Manaia. And so she had the opportunity to meet Manaia, and likewise for him, and that's something we will forever treasure as a family, as a whānau. What happened though in the course of campaigning for those two drugs was that other people started reaching out, other people in particular with cancers. So I can think of patients with lung cancer who wanted Keytruda funded. I can think of people with brain cancer who wanted Avastin funded, and the list was just endless. And then on top of that, we had people from the rare disorder community reaching out and saying, hey, there are some drugs that we would like to see funded. I think of, in particular, children with spinal muscular atrophy, SMA. If you are unlucky to be diagnosed with a severe form of SMA, your lifespan's very short. The drug that they wanted funded was Spinraza. Eventually we were successful in seeing that funded as well. And then on top of that, we also had people with chronic illnesses reach out and say, we need drugs as well. And these tended to be people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes. So for type 1s, they wanted the continuous glucose meters. For the type 2, there were a whole bunch of drugs that they wanted funded. So we campaigned over probably a 5 or 6 year period. And we had some success along the way. I'm glad to say that I believe the current government is doing a good job of reforming Pharmac, certainly taking the patient community with them and the patient advocates, but we still don't fund Pharmac enough, and that's why we're at the bottom of the developed world when it comes to access to modern medicines. We're about level with Mexico and Venezuela, I think, from memory. So that's the drug stuff. In doing that, we felt that we were getting overwhelmed with requests. Help me with this drug, tell me about this drug, so on and so forth. And so we formed an organisation called Patient Voice Aotearoa, which is the organisation that I've chaired since its inception. But what we've noticed over the past, I'll say 2 years, is a really steady increase in the number of patients who are reaching out to us, who are coming in and saying, I can't get a certain procedure done, or I can't see a particular specialist, or I can't see my GP, the waiting list is too long, what should I do? The books are full. I have to travel to another town in order to see my doctor. And we've really noticed the increasing number of queries that we're receiving around this. In conjunction with that, about October last year, I received a call from my father, George. George is 84 years old, lives in the middle of nowhere in a 5-acre block in a place called Sedenville, which is 40 miles north of Westport, in the Buller. Everybody knows where Buller is? I have asked that question before and people haven't known, so oh, you're a very educated lot here in Whakatane, of course you are. So, Buller, and Dad rang me up and he said, son, I'm in Buller Hospital, and it was a brand new hospital, by the way, and I'm being transferred to Greymouth, and Greymouth's been now south. I said, well, Dad, why are they shifting you from one hospital to another? Just leave you there. And he said, that's because they have to shut down the hospital. I said, why are they shutting down the hospital? Because they don't have enough staff. So it was coming up to the weekend, they couldn't find any staff to man the hospital. And so it wasn't just Dad who was shifted, it was every other patient that was in the ward. I think from memory, Buller has about 12 beds. And so what was happening was that the one ambulance that services the entire province of Buller was having to transport patients between Westport and Greymouth. So Lord forbid, if you're in an ED situation needing the ambulance, you can't get it because the ambulance is already down in Greymouth. I just thought this just didn't sound right to me. So we knew that there was a brand new hospital, about $17 to $20 million had been spent building this thing. And in its first year of operation, we found out that the hospital had been shut for a total of 1 month. So for 1 month, there were no ED services in particular in Buller. Now that's one province in New Zealand, and Buller is a massive geographical space. The other problems that you've got in Buller is that you can be choppered, but of course that's weather permitting, and you'll either be flown to Nelson or to Christchurch. And then on top of that, as I said before about the ambulance being out of the community, if the hospital is shut, you then have to make your way down to Greymouth. Now, if you live in Karamea, which is the northernmost community of Buller, that's a 3-hour drive. So you've got to get yourself in a car, and we know that there have been patients who have had a heart attack or are having a heart attack, who have tried to drive that distance, who have had to pull over and get help from a local, normally a fireman. So this is what was happening in Buller. And then there was a high-profile death. So there was a gentleman, 51 years old, Filipino worker, Leo Lozano. He went to Buller ED in the morning complaining of a tightening chest. They took his blood pressure, it was through the roof. He was diagnosed as having reflux, very bad reflux, and he was given omeprazole and sent home. At 4 p.m. that day, there was a thud on the floor. His flatmates walked in. They took him back to Buller ED, and he was pronounced dead. There was a serious incident review done into what had happened. Now, admittedly, it would have been quite difficult to save Leo from what he did pass from, an aortic dissection, as I understand what he had. But there were certainly problems about the misdiagnosis of what eventually claimed his life. And what the investigation found was that you had one doctor who had been working multiple shifts, long shifts, being responsible for ED, for the ward and for the community. And that doctor was stressed. And that was a contributing factor towards his misdiagnosis and subsequent to that, his death. The third thing that happened in Buller was that they used to have, well they had I should say, after hours clinics, and these were set up by local GPs in certain communities right throughout the West Coast. I'm not now just talking about Buller, I'm talking about from Karamea right down to Newcastle and inwards to Reefton. And people could access these after hours and weekends clinics if they really needed some help. Health New Zealand decided to shut them down. The service that it was replaced with was telehealth. Now that's really problematic for a place like Buller. You've got an elderly population, where internet access and cell phone access is very limited in certain parts. The solution that was proposed to them by Health New Zealand was that if you needed to access a doctor via telehealth, find your way to the local library because you can pick up free Wi-Fi. There's massive problems with that, right? We're talking about stretches of road, 100, 200k in some instances. But the other thing that started to happen for the people who were accessing the service was that they noticed they were speaking to people with an Australian accent. And they found this quite weird. So I didn't realise that in New Zealand, you can be a registered doctor, but not actually live in New Zealand. You can get your registration, but live overseas. So the doctors that they were speaking to were based in Australia. Now, I don't mean to have a dig at the doctors in Australia. I'm sure they're very good, they're very competent. But they lack geographical knowledge, at the very least, about New Zealand. And so what had happened was that a patient who lived in Westport had rung up to access the telehealth service, was written a prescription for whatever ailment they had, and was told to collect that prescription from a closed pharmacy in Whakatane. Whakatane, for those of you who don't know, is about, 2.5, 3 hours from Westport. It just wasn't working. So all of these issues were happening in little old Bulla. And then they said, right, what are we going to do about it? So they reached out to me because the name Mulholland comes from Bulla, Dad lives there. And I said, well, why don't we march from Victoria Square to the town clock down Palmerston Street? 2,000 people showed up and marched. Bulla only has a population of 6,000 in total. It was really an awesome day for that community to come together. Then I said, but what are we going to do when we get there? It's all very well to do the march and to show how angry you are about the issue, but you've actually got to have an ask to the government. And so that's when we came up with the Bulla Declaration on the State of the New Zealand Health System, which is to my left. So at the end of tonight, we're going to invite you, if you're so inclined, to come and sign the declaration. I'm going to ask Victor's here, the Mayor, to do it, and then this declaration will sit most likely in your library where anybody can go and sign it. So this is a part of the roadshow. I'm going to these communities, they're all being given a sheet like this and being encouraged to sign. The declaration says 5 things. 1, the health system is in a state of crisis. 2, that the government act urgently to fix it. 3, rural, Māori and lower income are disproportionately affected. 4, we've got to do better when it comes to Māori health. And 5, we must allocate additional resources to train, recruit and retain more nurses, doctors, specialists and health workers. It's pretty simple in its ask, but I think that's the beauty of it. And I think it's one of those moments in history, moments in New Zealand's history, where we're drawing a line in the sand and saying, these are the expectations that we have on the government, whether it be Labour or national, when it comes to our public health system. So, that's what the declaration is about. That's why I'm going around and touring the country. I could tell you a number of horror stories about what my own family have encountered over the past 3 years, 4 years. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to talk to you about, though, is what I've learned about your local hospital. So you all know that obstetrics and gynecology is basically gone. And forgive me, these figures just came through quite late, so I am going to have to read a little. Now, the 3 areas, so this is via the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists. They're the unions for the doctors who work in the hospital, and they are constantly surveying their members about what is happening in the hospital. So, I didn't bring my reading glasses, did I? There are 3 departments that they're very worried about. One of them is psychiatry, which I'll come to later. Another is radiology, and the other is ED. So ED, and what you'll find is that there's a difference between budgeted need, so these are the amount of positions that are budgeted for by Health New Zealand, and unmet need. That's the number of doctors the doctors believe is actually needed to meet the demand in the community. But if we're talking about budgeted positions, there should be, in ED, in Whakatane, there should be 14 senior medical officers, senior doctors. Currently there's 8.6. In July that's going to drop to 7.6. And in August it will rise slightly, but it's still under 10. So even according to their own books, they're short by 4 doctors, very deep. Now, the problem that you've got with senior medical officers or senior doctors is that it's compounded by the lack of resident medical officers or house officers, other junior doctors. And so what has been happening, for example, in the area of medicine, is that for Whakatane, there have been no out-of-hours junior doctors for medicine. And what that does is creates more pressure on the senior doctor to pick up the slack, and that's how they suffer burnout and leave. Now, I want to talk to you about psychiatry, because this, according to the doctors, could very well be the next obstetrics and gynecology problem. So, psychiatry currently has 1 psychiatrist. There should be 2 in budgeted need. In reality, there should be 3 and probably more. Even 3 is a bit light. But they currently have 1. And they're very, very concerned that if that 1 doctor leaves, there'll be no psychiatrists in Whakatane Hospital. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the huge problems that your community faces in the area of mental health. So, I'm telling you tonight, that is the area that the doctors are most concerned about. That could be your next obstetrics and gynecology. I'm going to leave it there. I'm now going to invite, we've got Jess and Kiriru, and they are nursing students, 3rd year nursing students from Te Wharewananga o Awanuiarangi, and they're going to talk to you about what their thoughts are, and then we're going to come briefly to your Mayor Victor, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A and comment. So, Jess and Kiriru, no more. Just as they are coming, one of the things I learned, and this is a domino effect, so I'm not too familiar with how many services, with how many services local people access in Rotorua Hospital. Is there a number, or is it mostly Tauranga? I'm not sure. Tauranga, okay. One of the things I learned about Taupo is that it's probably not a case of if, but when they have to shut down their hospital. Think of what's happening in Bulla, the exact same thing's happening in Taupo. At the moment, they've only got 2.3 FTE doctors in total. If they have to shut down, and they've made plans to do this, they'll have to transfer all their patients to Rotorua. Rotorua suffers badly from bed block. There's no beds. So God knows where those patients are going to go. Anyway, here we have Jess and Kiriru.
Held up. Oh, do I need this? Okay. Mauri ore te whānau, ko Kiriru Hicks tōku ingoa, he uri o te aroa rangatāne me te apauri, engari e tupu au ki te waipounamu. I actually grew up on Westport in Waiming, Waimangaroa, yeah, so I know that, yeah. So my name's Kiriru and I'm in my final year of nursing, along with Jess. I got into nursing because my second child, he was really sick when he was born, and we spent a lot of time in hospital, and I just saw how ran down the staff were. The wards were full, and no fault of their own, but they could only do so much because they had so many patients that they needed to care for. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I can solve all the problems in the world. 3 years in, I realised I can't, but yeah. So today I want to address a pressing issue that affects every New Zealander, and it's the current crisis our healthcare system is in today. I thought I would stand before you all and give you a whole bunch of statistics, but I decided not to. 1, because you probably know them better than me, and 2, the crisis is more than a statistic. It's real life. It's happening here today. We don't need the statistics because our eyes, whether you have 2 or 4 like myself, can see this crisis today. We have our ears, no matter how much selective hearing they have, we can hear the karanga from our nurses, doctors, healthcare assistants and whai ora patients. As previously mentioned, we are in our final year of nursing, and during this placement we have seen hospitals that are overwhelmed. Our GPs here currently, I have a 2-week wait to get seen. Our healthcare workers are so stretched. One of my placements, they were meant to have three patients. They ended up having 6 because they're just so stretched. Our resources are depleted. So one of my friends just did a placement and there wasn't enough urine bottles for the whai ora on the ward, so they were having to go to other wards to find some, just so our whānau, our patients can go to, can use them. Our whānaus are waiting longer for essential treatments. Workload's increasing. During my placement, I've had to hold the hand of people as they've passed away. I've comforted people as they've found out bad news, and I've celebrated as they've been discharged. So my next topic I want to talk about is the lack of job opportunities for new grad nurses and qualified RNs. So despite our 3-year degree and our passion for healthcare, we face the uncertainty as if we're going to get a job or not. Positions that should be available aren't, and leaving us all in a state of limbo, which does not add up, as we've seen firsthand the urgent need for nurses. So me and Jess, we're both mamas. I have 2 children, and we both gave up full-time jobs to pursue nursing, which is it's a struggle in itself. And to find out we might not have a job was a little bit, scary. That's the word I was going to use. So I'm just going to end my kōrero with a quote from the late Moana Jackson. We must make time to imagine the future that we want, then lay down a strategy for its achievement. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou tātou.
Thank you, girl. Hello, good evening. My name is Jess, ko Waio, ko Jessica Martina Barnes tōku ingoa, e huri tēnei ki te aroa Ngāti Tau Ngāti Whāua, mai katoa Ngāti Maniapoto. I am a Year 3 student. We do have another Year 3 student for Tautoko that's come to support us. I'm honoured to be here today. Just a short kōrero about our health crisis and how it's affected our studying and our education and the implications of health barriers living in a rural community. So a little bit about myself. I'm from a really, I wouldn't say small community, 20 minutes south of Rotorua, called Reporo. So usually you'll hit and miss it. It's if you see the Fonterra signage, or you'll see the big Homer Simpson station, the big smoke coming out, that you've missed it. But yeah, you're there. It's a roundabout. And yeah, I began my study here in 2023. With the aspirations of becoming a nurse, not just any nurse, but a good nurse, to focus on making change, to break down barriers on health for my community, my whānau and my children. Heading into my Year 3, I must say that as we get closer for state exam prep, so in November, after our placement and our transitions, we head into state prep, so that pretty much just defines if we're a nurse or not, if we pass this exam. And it's the best nerves I've ever had, apart from this, if you can see me shaking. I just wanted to focus on 2 things in regards to being a student. So, as Kireru said, limited placement opportunities. So, if you didn't know by now that with the crisis going on, there's limited opportunities for us to get the placements or the jobs we wanted. For example, I would like to be an ED, and just apparently there's not enough nurses, but there's not enough jobs, so it just goes round and round. That's what we hear. Sorry, I missed it. The financial struggles. So again, I'm from a 1-income household, so I came from a full-time job, decided to pursue my nursing, and I wouldn't say it's a struggle. I have a really awesome Tanya who works at Surtees. So building boats, so if anybody wants to build a boat, come to me after this. We don't own a Fisher, what is it? Yeah, I can't remember the name. So just the financial struggles that we face, like placement, travelling. We've recently just finished a placement in the Waikato at Henry Bennett, and yeah, the travelling there was good. Yeah, not good, but the opportunity there was awesome. And the mental health strain. So as students, we are also mamas, we are also parents. You know, we multitasks and studying. It's a strain, and we struggle, but we want to be the best. and get to the goal, end goal. So, sorry. I come from a rural community, and I did want to speak on 2 points. So, mental health is not really talked about in small communities, and there's a stigma, I must say, when it comes to that. A lot of people don't want to talk about their mental health issues, so it's really embarrassing, whakama. So I think that's one of the areas we do need to talk about a bit more when it comes to mental health, and again, financial issues and education. We don't have as much education around health, therefore a lot of people won't want to come into the hospital, or they don't feel that they're worth it, that it's a struggle. So those were the 2 things I wanted to talk about, just touch on, not have a big essay about, but yeah, so I think all in all, thank you so much for letting us have a talk. Yeah, very honoured. Awesome, thank you.
It takes a lot of courage, not just in terms of public speaking, but the fact that they are going to be our next generation of nurses to come and speak. So I really take my hat off to both you, Jess and Kiriru, for your words. I know nurses get very nervous about speaking to. We've had a number of nurses speak to us. And how impressive that I get to meet somebody from Waimea or Waimangaroa. That is, I can't even compare it to a community man here, because I'm thinking, what's so small? But yeah, we've got to talk after this. Victor, can you come up and just briefly say a couple of words from your perspective? Thank you.
A couple of words is not really in my...
Forte?
Not my forte. I guess everybody knows who I am. New Zealand today has a housing crisis, an infrastructure crisis, an education crisis, a law and order crisis, and a health crisis. And I'm a guy who's spent most of his life studying and researching, and I like to get down to the root causes of things. Before I came to New Zealand, I spent 10 years in Argentina, where I was working at the Comisión Nacional de Energía Atómica, which is the Atomic Energy Commission. I went there without health insurance in my first few years, and I experienced in the various places that I've lived various health systems. In Argentina, in the first 2 years, I had the misfortune of having a renal colic, which is kidney stones, painful as buggery, and I ended up not having health insurance. I ended up going to the public hospital. Well, the first one kicked me out. It wasn't a public, it was a private hospital. They said you need $30,000 deposit before you can come in here. So I ended up at the public hospital, where I vomited outside, and within half an hour I was in front of a pretty competent doctors. The doctors are good. I got blood test pretty quickly and a conventional x-ray. One that most young people wouldn't recognise, because I think it's still working on a photographic plate. But nevertheless, it's an x-ray. 2 hours later I was called back in, and he said, well, you've got a renal colic. And I got a lure stuck in my arm and put in a little cubicle. After that, I got shoved into the passageway, where I sat I lay on a table like this most of the night. And since they didn't have a pillow, they used a plastic bag that they found some cotton wool and stuffed it full of cotton wool. That's Argentina, that's Buenos Aires, which is quite a sophisticated city in many ways, and they have really good doctors. But they have a hybrid health system. Those that have money will buy the insurance, and they'll get 5-star treatment, the likes of which you don't get even in this country, I don't think. Those that don't have the money, they're at the mercy of a rundown public health system. They do what they can, but they don't have the tools. My pillow was a plastic bag stuffed with cotton wool. After 10 years, I came back here, thinking that I was coming back to a country that had a public health system. But what did I find out? Well, my first experience was going to the doctor and saying, I'd like a cardio ultrasound scan. oh, Whakatane Hospital doesn't have a scanner. So a cardio ultrasound scanner can be a little laptop device that looks like this, costs $5,000, got a bunch of sensors on it. Not exactly a big outlay for a hospital, but we didn't have one here. I got 2 scans in Argentina, but I couldn't get one here. So that was the first alarm bell for me. And I thought, hang on, things aren't the way I think they are. And then I bumped into a gentleman over sitting at the back there, Sandy Milne, who's been on this campaign for a lot longer than I have. So he got me into it, and I spent 4 or 5 years researching what makes our health system tick or not tick. Our health system is a hybrid health system. 35% of New Zealanders have got private health insurance. The rest of us don't. And so we are at the mercy of a public system under a lot of stress. And this crisis that we're experiencing today didn't happen today. It didn't happen last year or the year before that or the year before that. It has been ongoing probably for about 40 years. And if you have to look at root causes, you have to ask yourself, why has the system been run down? Why are we a just in time and just enough sort of health system? Why don't we have doctors and nurses? Well, there are reasons for that. And at the recent health conference we had an economist speaking. And he wasn't there for no reason. Because at the heart of all this, Malcolm will say, we need doctors. Well, doctors, you can't just pull them out of thin air. It takes 10 or 12 years to train a doctor and a lot of resources. When I went to university, my roommate, he was a guy called Gareth Blackshaw, who's a doctor now in Tauranga, but he was doing English literature. His parents wanted him to be a doctor. He got trained by the state. We invested in people 30 years ago, in human capital. We turned universities into a business. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they still have to pay their own way. Researchers have to make money, not apply themselves to basic research. And, to train nurses, you're running on the bones of you know what. You do your hard yards. You do a job I could never do. So do doctors. I could never be a medical doctor. And so I just have to take my hat off to you. But we didn't get to where we are today by accident. This has been engineered. And it's called neoliberal economics, basically. The idea that the market fixes everything. And the market has failed. It's failed in all of the areas I mentioned that we have crises in. The energy crisis is a failure of a market system that we put in place. And government that says, we don't get involved in that sort of stuff, right? They expect the market to do its job and for them to stand outside that and be like bystanders. They don't understand that education is an investment. It's not a business and it's not a cost. You develop your people, and when you get trained today as a doctor, you pay $100 and something thousand, and then what do? Well, you want to recoup your investment in yourself, and half of them probably leave. So doctors don't come out of thin air. You have to train them. We don't have enough today. We don't have enough specialists. Malcolm referred to some other medical specialties. I keep telling everybody it's not obstetrics and gynecology only. That's only 1 out of 41. There are 41 dominoes that could fall here, and I think that we're in a state of decline that we're not really prepared for at all. And people need to be aware. The fact that we've only got a handful of people here tonight tells me that there's a lot of apathy in communities. Unless it hits them in the backside, nobody moves. We should have seen this coming long ago. And now we've got a government, sorry Robin, but I've got to go there.
Apologies accepted.
That thinks they're going to cure the patient with a scalpel. So we're going to start cutting away more resources when actually it's resources that we need. And the Association for Salaried Medical Specialists realises that. And Health New Zealand has said we're 1,700 doctors short. And we have relied on an international job market. We've advertised ourselves as clean and lean and green and all those great things. Come and work in New Zealand. We'll stop trading hours. We'll get a third world doctor in here. Offer them, political stability and a better sort of lifestyle, and they'll come and work here. That's what we've done. It's not an accident that we are where we are today. And I thank Malcolm for his crusade. And some of us have been on this crusade for a while. I've got 5 years. He's got about, I don't know, He's been going for a while now. 20. This is where we are today, and all we can do is make a lot of noise and try and rattle the cage a bit. But we need to change an entire system. And the economist that spoke at our conference, which was I think called the pointy-headed talk fest. So getting to the root causes of things and trying to understand what you're dealing with, that's a pointy-headed talk fest. So I have to take objection to people who say stupid things like that. But if you don't nail the root cause of something, you can't cure it. Otherwise, you risk misdiagnosing and killing people. And so I think that's where we are. I won't say any more because I was only supposed to speak for, I do a couple of words. But anyway, I could go on all night. I won't. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so we're at the point now where we do open the floor for Q&A for comment. And so, yeah, thank you. So this part's not filmed, by the way, because often people sometimes